Hai teman-teman, kita lagi kumpul-kumpul di Taman Suropati mau ngobrol sama Kathy, Carol, sama Elisa, JMers dari Amerika. Yuk kita ikutin bareng-bareng.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So I was a teacher and I thought homeschoolers were crazy.
Jadi pada saat itu beliau guru dan kayaknya homeschooling tuh crazy gitu ya, kayak
Because,
something that you cannot do gitu ya.
Right, I went to school to learn to be a teacher. Never really thinking that the school must not have prepared me very well if I couldn't teach my children anything. I'm teaching pregnant with our oldest, who some of you met, Molly, and the teaching environment was not very good. And so it saddened me how many teachers didn't really like the kids and didn't have very many nice things to say about them. And so maybe it was a good thing, as I was at this stage, to kind of step back and say, maybe I should listen to some of these homeschoolers. So after Molly was born, my husband and I talked, and we decided that we would pursue homeschooling. So at that point in time, it was before the internet, right? Before all the things that we have access to now. The way we found out about homeschooling was to gather as moms in a situation like this and learn from one another, unless you talked on the phone. I feel like the path I started down, though, was really one of, I will bring my public school mentality to my homeschool. So when we started, we would do the workbook pages, read the story, do the workbook pages, and it was not working. And I still have etched in my memory, sitting in our dining room at this wonderful oak table, looking out to this beautiful backyard, literally Molly crying, and me, I'm sure my voice was raised. Was I screaming and yelling? I don't know, but I was not someone I would want to listen to now, right? And I just really cried out to God, there has to be something different. And so I started from this end, which is what I would call very traditional, and moved over to the other end, which would be what I would consider unschooling. So just follow the child, all child-led. And so we did that, but it didn't seem like we really did much, in a sense. But then, somehow, I was at a homeschool convention and found this a Charlotte Mason how-to by Catherine Levison, just a little slim book. And I picked it up and I thought, you know what, this doesn't look very intimidating. Intimidating. And so I took it home and I read it. And there was another book by Karen Andriola, The Homeschool Companion. And I was just fascinated by things that she had to say. And it's not child-centered, but it is very much valuing the child as a person created in the image of God. And I knew that was something that was missing from my own educational philosophy. And also just her second big principle, education is the science of relations. And I thought, when I taught and when I tried to bring school home, everything's disjointed. It doesn't all go together. And so I was part of a mom's group like this. And I said, how about if I share a little each month from this Charlotte Mason companion, and we can start to learn about some of these aspects of a Charlotte Mason education that most of us don't do in our home schools. So of course we started with narration and short lessons. And our group of about 10 or 12, by the winter grew to 65 ladies coming. And so we ended up asking Catherine Levison, hey, we're doing some things. We asked Karen Andriola, hey, we've got this group going. And Karen's husband, Dean, wrote us back and said, hey, good luck with your group. And Catherine Levison said, if you can get me there, there's a 1-day workshop that I'll give. And so she came to Ohio from the state of Washington, which is pretty much across the USA, if you know that geography. And she did a 1-day conference for us. And out of that grew what we only got to call the Charlotte Mason Leadership Team. So we all grew together, and we would get our kids together, and we started doing workshops and just trying to share the feast. And I always continued to grow in this way. And yet, some of you know our story that we then adopted. And so at that point in time, we had children 5, 6, 7, and 11. And a lot of our journey, we tried to continue Charlotte Mason-wise. And a lot of our journey, we had to pivot some because of some special needs that were now in our family. And so my heart still was always a Charlotte Mason heart. And I'm going to jump ahead, all right? So I feel like more and more, I continue to learn how much this kind of living, and as we've talked, that one quote that Charlotte Mason has when a young gal came to her school of education, right? And Charlotte says to her, "Why have you come?" And she said, "I have come here to learn to teach." And Charlotte replies, you know the quote? "No, my dear, basically, you have come here to learn to live." And I think so much of education is not living. It's learning to fill in a box based upon what you think the teacher wants you to answer. And we've taken so much life out of it. Now, I know that's not every person's experience. However, it was my experience when I also ended up becoming a home instruction tutor. So in Ohio, if a child is out of school for at least 3 weeks due to an illness or a car accident, or it could be a pregnancy, or they might have even had an abortion, all right? The school where I was a home instruction tutor wanted to keep their graduation rates up. So they would put lots of kids on home instruction. So I'll share one story from that. So one student I had, and we were going to do her junior English class. So I had the textbook, and I'm like, and it's American Lit. And I'm like, so is there anything here that you know, any author you like to read, any story that you like love? And I just got a blank stare. And so I had to really think through, and again, here's the Charlotte Mason as I'm processing things. I thought, you know what? She's going to be a mom someday, probably. She doesn't like to read. How do we read something that just becomes words that have no meaning if you don't like to read and you've never read any of these things? So I took her to the library with us, and we'd check out children's books. And I'd have her read to my children. And she discovered The Wizard of Oz. And I think there are like maybe 14 books in that series. And I went to what we call an IEP, just a meeting with her mom and my boss to talk about what she was doing. And I thought, you know, I could be in trouble here because we're not following this like set curriculum that is set for the junior year of high school. And literally her mom came in and she said, "You just need to know that my daughter is reading. It's time for us to like have dinner." And she was supposed to like help with dinner or whatever. And she would say to her mom, "Could I just like finish this page?" And so I was so thankful that her mom saw the value in her daughter reading and enjoying it. I don't know the ending of that story. I don't know if she's married and had children, but I'd like to think that some kind of spark was at least ignited, that she too continues to read to this day. But those are the things I look at and I say, there's something, and the phrase on a lot of issues, the good, the true, and the beautiful. So the things in life that like not only inspire you, but cause you to have awe and wonder. So many of those things have been taken out of our educational lives. And I feel like Charlotte Mason allows us to get back in touch with those things while we're continuing to do the reading, the writing, and the arithmetic, right? And yet it can be maybe in what I would call a more gentle way as you look at the child and what their needs are, and as you progress along a path. And I think one of the things that was the most surprising to me was the idea of short lessons. You mean I don't have to do the whole lesson? I could like break it into a couple days if need be, because is mastery not our goal versus getting through the material? So anyway, so I still love being with moms especially, and I love dads coming around too, so I don't mean to not say that, but it just has been a joy of my heart over the last decades of my life, because in Ohio, people had to either do testing to continue to homeschool, or they had to meet with a certified teacher, and that teacher, me in this case, would review a portfolio of their child's work, and it just could be from the beginning, the middle, the end of the year, and it just had to show progress was being made. It's called a narrative assessment. I don't even think they knew what they were saying when they maybe used that word narrative. But it was very fun to me to be able to sit down with these moms and dads if they came. The child did not have to be involved, and have her narrate about what her year was like and the good things and maybe things she might want to talk about to change for the next year, but just to rejoice with her in the year of learning that their family has had. So now in Ohio, believe it or not, the only thing you have to do is just send in a piece of paper and say, hey, just want to let you know we're homeschooling. So in some ways I'm out of a job, but I still get together with people and just, hear their stories. And so I was sharing this in our meeting earlier. I think one of my great surprises and joys, my son Andy has been married for, I don't even know, 6 years? I lose count, sorry. And they have a 2.5-year-old, Ellie. And my daughter-in-law actually was an English major in college. She loves story. And so the surprise that I've had is how much the two of us have enjoyed our conversations and our journeys about books together and how we learn. And just, she's now on her own Charlotte Mason path. Whereas once upon a time, she looked at Andy and she said, I don't get homeschooling, and I certainly don't get that your mom didn't give you grades. I put grades on a transcript, but he never got grades otherwise. But now she is getting it. And so how fun to be able to journey along with her too. So I hope that helps, or thanks for asking, but I hope that that gives you just at least a little bit. So I continue to read, I listen to podcasts. I recently heard Karen Glass. I went to her for a one-day seminar she did. Cindy Rollins spoke at a conference about a year and a half ago. And so I just get to continue to hang out with moms that are still in the trenches, homeschooling their kids and learning from them. There's still much to learn. And I will share one more story. So one of my good friends, she actually, she and her family lived in Ukraine for quite a while before they had to leave. And she said, Kathy, I think the one benefit that I didn't, again, another surprise that I didn't expect. She said, I used to be in conversations like with my relatives, like at a holiday, and I felt like I had nothing to say. But she said, I'm becoming a more interesting person because of the things that I'm doing with my child. And I think, that's one of those benefits that we don't go into it with that's being our goal. But that is the natural byproduct of a lifestyle of learning. Moms and dads learn too. You can't help but learn. So thanks for listening to me. Anyway, so Yeah, well, thank you. And again, just know from my heart, this is like such a joy of my heart to be with you all and to get reconnected, you know, after, and that was such a blessing to be with these guys and families and just see your vision for homeschooling and for Charlotte Mason in particular in all of Indonesia. So, and it's just fun to get to catch up again a little bit and know it's just another part of our story together. So, and Alyssa is the connection. So I want to make sure that, you know, she's the one that has made this happen. That, again, one of those things I look at and just go, thank you, Lord, that somehow you wrote our journey, our story, that we could travel together in this way. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So
sharing about CM, cerita tentang CM di Indonesia ini has been your dream, right?
it has. It has.
Sudah lama punya mimpi untuk bisa cerita tentang CM di Indonesia gitu. Until one day Kathy datang ke our first conference ya.
Yeah.
Ya, dia datang ke conference temu raya pertama kita untuk so it becomes like her dreams and also it's our dreams too ya. Jadi kayak it's fate then ya.
Mhm.
We have a fate and then yeah.
And there's so many things in the States homeschooling wise, but they're really geared to the United States. Whereas Charlotte Mason, I don't know how she had this global perspective, but the things that are part of how you learn and embrace, it doesn't matter where you live. You take what you have in your culture, your community, and then you add to it. And so, yeah, so it made it easy to come and just, because principles, right? Principles translate into any culture. And once you go back and figure out your why and what really is your perspective on education, then you hold on to those things, as we've been saying, and then what fits in with that. And that's where, at least for those of us gathered, I imagine, we would say yes, for whatever reason, we have embraced Charlotte Mason. So because of that, because of our why. Yeah. So.
Yeah. It's not only to learn or to learn subjects, but also to live. Yeah.
To live.
Mason is
Yes.
more broad.
Because how many of us, I don't know if this is true for you, but how many of us finished a class in school, and maybe it was a history class, whatever it might have been, and we finish and we say, I closed my book, I've learned that, I'm done with it, I don't want to ever learn about that again, as opposed to I've just started. The longer I have to learn, I still will never learn it all. Mm-hmm.
Or closing it from a class and not remembering anything.
Or not remembering anything is so true. Yeah. Because you study for the test.
I think it's only happened with us in Indonesia. Actually, it happened worldwide. Right?
Yes, worldwide. Yes.
After the test, and then you forget everything.
And so that's why you see the value of narration, right? Because then the child is remembering the things that are important to them. Charlotte Mason says something like, how crazy it is we ask questions that no one wants to answer, right? But we still do it sometimes. And so anyway, that's why I just appreciate more and more that whole idea of narration. And so narration, short lessons, right? Living books, the three, atmosphere, discipline, life, all those like pillars, you could say, of the why and then carried out into the how and the what.
Kita wondering nggak sih kayak Amerika? Yeah, I think like the practitioner in United States is much more compared to Indonesia, right?
Well, and remember
much
I don't
more,
know if you remember when I came before, I felt like at that point in time, and this is not, please don't take this negatively, because we all start somewhere, but I felt like where you guys were at that point was kind of where I saw Charlotte Mason beginning in the States about the 15, 20 years ago. But listening just a little bit more, right? And knowing things that you guys have done, it's like you're like on their heels. I think one thing they have, and I realized this from our time this morning, that probably isn't happening here yet, is there are many people who have said, you know what, there are resources that are no longer available because they're out of print.
Oh.
And so there are many publishing companies that have grown up because they want to republish the books that would be used in a Charlotte Mason education. So in that sense, even though things are being translated, right? You know, things are being translated. More and more people hopefully will embrace that, and maybe more resources will be made available to everyone. Because I feel like probably resources are always one of those things that
Yeah.
we just need. Thing.
Yeah.
And in the United States, we are entering a different age that's kind of scary, where we have lots of libraries, but they're getting rid of the old books, the books that we would read in a Charlotte Mason education. And they're replacing them with books that probably we really don't want our kids to read. So, yeah. So anyway, there's been lots and lots of library sales, which is great for homeschoolers if you can get the books, but not so good for the general population. Yeah.
Since Charlotte Mason is so minority, right? In among homeschoolers in Indonesia, we're so minority. So we're always like wondering what happened to our children after they graduate. No, I mean like elementary level or junior high level. Maybe it's easier compared to when we already have like teenagers, right? And when we see the reality of education that happens in this world, maybe not only in Indonesia but everywhere, it's like we need to adapt to the reality, which is, yeah, one example, like when we want our children to get scholarship, then of course they need to follow
They've got hoops to
the
jump
world
through.
standards, right? Not Charlotte Mason standard. Or yeah, while they're in universities, will they really be able to
So
follow the
I
compared.
can't answer that for all of you, but I will say in the United States, homeschoolers are actually sought by the universities. And the reason that they are sought is because a homeschooler is generally going to finish their 4 years at that college. So the college's retention rates are higher. So it's really, I don't know how much of it is a purely financial reason that they appreciate homeschoolers, but generally speaking, the homeschooler, if they start at that school, is going to finish at that school. Versus out of the general population, students drop out all the time. Does that make sense what I'm saying in terms of that? I'm not sure if I communicated it clearly. But I can only speak for myself in many ways and friends of mine that I feel like we probably needlessly worried about many things that I know for myself when I felt like I was overwhelmed by that and took my eyes off of our journey and diverted to like trying to prepare for a test, which I'm not saying that you shouldn't prepare for something if that's what you need to do. But I feel like we missed out on a whole almost year of what we could have been doing versus what we ended up doing that ended up not working. So I think that answer in some ways is different for every person, but at the same time, I don't think, well, I'll back up just a little bit. I think we were in the same place as you going, can our children get into college? Is that really kind of a question? Can they survive as an adult? Can they get a job? And I think they're the kind of people that an employer wants to hire because of their character qualities and their ability to stay on task and focus and be respectful and finish the job and all of those kinds of things.
It matters much more not what the child or the person knows, but how much they care.
Yes, that's her quote.
Because if you graduate a child that their IQ, right, their intelligence is so high, but how they're interacting with people every day is sombong saja. Nobody wants that. But you can have someone who values education and the beauty of life, and their character is kind, and how they're interacting. And that is a way higher value. I hope that's something that the colleges are looking for. I know in the workforce, you have someone who's going to be of character.
Show
it's
up
a
on
high
time.
value. You can learn skills. You can't learn character quickly. That's something that's built through time. Yeah.
And so that liberal.
Don't worry. What overthinking mother?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Do I write a book?
You wrote a book about your journey?
No. No, my husband and Molly think I should, but I have not. But so thanks for asking. Yeah. But you know what, guys? I feel like we've been where some of you are, because you're going, does this work? Right? And I can say from the United States, it works. Stay the course. You're giving your child such a rich education. There's a book called Range by a man named Epstein is his last name, I believe. David Epstein, maybe? I don't know. But just comparing a couple of different athletes, and one was just solely focused on their sport, and the other didn't start to focus until they were in their mid-teens. And just, if you look at their career paths, the solely focused one is a mess of a human being, and the other one just has a wide variety of interests. And so the book gives example after example of how we keep trying to pinpoint people and pigeonhole them, like the whole STEM and STEAM. I don't know if you have that here, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And now they've tried to do STEAM, adding arts. Okay. But how even that is a whole narrow focus. Yeah, sometimes we get a little, right? That's such a narrow focus that then they share about the Challenger accident. So the astronauts at the rocket went up and it exploded 13 seconds into the air. And how there was somebody who said, I think there's a problem with this little thing. And because of the hierarchy of how all that existed, they weren't able to even listen to it because of how I can't explain it all, and it doesn't matter for this period of time. But just, we need people that have this broad base, that have just are living life. I mean, why do we want to go to school to be able to get a job and pay for a few necessities and some extras? What a very dull life. And Charlotte Mason talks about that over and over again. And we see it. I mean, what makes me so sad? I've tutored some kids that are like second, third graders or so. And I'll be like, what did you like about school today? What did you learn? Nothing. I hate school. And I think to be 7 or 8 years old and coming home and saying that is just a travesty, a shame. So I don't know that answers a question, but anyway. Well, and I would hate school if I had to sit at a desk all day and be on a computer and keep taking tests. I mean, they do so much testing in the States. So we'll see. Things may change a little bit, but we'll see. Yeah. But it's very lockstep. One of the things that I read that really helped me understand why I struggled as a teacher, John Taylor Gatto, Dumbing Us Down. Have any of you heard of that book? I know you have. So John Taylor Gatto was a teacher in New York. He was the New York State teacher once, and then he won the award for a second time. And so when he got up to receive this award, he gave this speech called The 7 Lessons School Teacher. And at the end of his speech, he said, and I quit. So the Wall Street Journal picked it up, and it became a book called Dumbing Us Down. And so his whole thing is, here's the curriculum that you think I'm teaching your child. when in reality, here's the curriculum I am teaching your child. And it's things like emotional and intellectual dependency. So the whole idea of smiley faces and stars and letter grades and all of those things, red lines on your paper, is teaching me to depend on you to know whether or not I'm valuable and doing a good job. All right? Now, that doesn't mean there is an assessment, but we've lost the art of self-assessment, which I think you can do in a Charlotte Mason education easily. So emotional, intellectual dependency. The whole idea that nothing's related to anything else, you know, because you've got, here's English, and here's history, and here's math, and none of them go together. Whereas when I don't know how many times in narration a child brings up something else, right? That you've been learning about or their brain's been processing. And if you did that in a classroom, the teacher would say, I'm sorry, that's not what we're talking about today. This is what the lesson's on. So as the child's putting all these things together, we've actually stopped that process for them. There are no quiet places. I mean, we've lost the opportunity, and Charlotte Mason refers to it as masterly inactivity. We've lost the space to have a chance to sit and think about what we're learning versus always have to reproduce it in a test, right? And you get to have that opportunity as you engage in any conversation with your child. I mean, it's amazing what they bring up when you're out on a nature hike or whatever it might be that they're really learning about and enjoying. But anyway, there's more, but that's kind of the idea. And so it's dumbing us down. I'm sure you can find it online even. And I'm glad to send you a copy. I have one on my computer. And then he wrote a book, which is like called The Underground History of American Education. And so Charlotte Mason has tried to write what went wrong with education when the whole Renaissance, Industrial Revolution, all of that stuff came onto the scene. Because with the Industrial Revolution, we needed factory workers, right? And so a factory worker, if you have a little bit of learning to be able to live life and a little bit of money to take care of your expenses, and we can teach you to just be content with not knowing that there's more out there, then we've succeeded in having a worker force. And that's very simplistic how I said it. So, you know, and again, I'm not trying to like put a mark on all education out there, but in its most basic form. So another person who wrote a book on that, and I don't remember, it's called A Thomas Jefferson Education. And it again compares that whole conveyor belt idea of an education, which is what we're talking about on the one hand, with the whole idea of there's got to be something more than that. So, and I'll just go back and I'll say one more thing. Another thing John Taylor Goddard talks about a lot is just how much we have disconnected the child from living life within a real family. I think that's one reason we've all embraced a Charlotte Mason education, because we want our children. We want to live life with our spouse and our children. And we like the idea that we get to learn alongside them. I will say this. One of the biggest things that was so helpful for me to finally grasp, and it took me a long time because I came out of a teacher mentality, was a teacher mentality is this, right? I'm the teacher, I'll impart my knowledge to you and you will learn this. And that really held me back, because if I didn't think I could learn or understand it, then a lot of times we just didn't do it, which is sad. But to have that idea that we're learners together. Now, that doesn't mean we don't lead the way, right? Yeah. We put the feast before them, but we can lead the way and we can learn alongside them. And is it okay to say, you know what, honey? I don't know what it means either. We'll keep reading and maybe we'll figure it out. But I think what it showed me too is I'm not as humble as I would really like to think that I am. So, and that's that piece we need, that humility. And I love listening to Cindy Rollins because over and over again, she just talks about being humble.
Yeah.
So,
that's when this life will not be dull anymore, right?
Yeah.
What an exciting life.
I mean, how beautiful to sit here, guys, in the midst of all this busy city. You don't even know it's out there. And to see people walking and just sitting and chatting and all the beauty around. you know, and to be with you all. So,
So, among Charlotte Mason practitioners, especially in Indonesia, many things we think that, okay, so we are as CMer, we call ourselves CMer, as
Yeah.
CMer, as
okay.
practitioners. Maybe we're good at, literature, maybe, or things like that, but not in math,
Yeah.
chemistry, physics. And many times we think like we're failing mothers, because we cannot like.
I think we all can identify as that.
Yeah. How about in States? Are you like facing the same?
We feel the same
problem?
thing. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And I think one of the things I shared this morning is I wished I would have like had somebody else do some math with my older kids, or at least here was the other thing we talked about in terms of our husbands, how much they're involved, right? I wish in some ways I would have said to my husband, hey, I really need your help with this. And he might have done it. He might not have, though he does say one of his biggest regrets is that he wasn't as involved as he wished he would have been. But I also think there's time where you go, I do need to just see if I can get some help with something. Because there's some things I go, you know what? I don't care if I learn about that again, to just be blunt. But there's other things that maybe I've had a bad introduction to it, and it would help to see it in a new light. But then it depends on how many kids you have and what responsibilities you have, the decision will probably be different for everybody. But I think it's okay to say, I can't do it all myself. I mean, I just think that's one of those things that you go, what is it about us? Is that lack of humility that we just can't say, I need help? I'm not sure. Do we put that pressure on ourselves to feel like we have to be the ones? And so, I wished I would have gone outside our little confines, I think, in a sense, sooner. There were some things I did. And to be frank, I'll share this. I had Andy take a chemistry class with somebody, but it was very much the read the text, answer the questions, and take the test. It's not how I would have done it. And I kind of wonder if I put more in there that will have to be undone. But you know what? Our kids are on their own journey. And so I look at my adult children, and there are things that I look at, and I will say this. I think the one thing that's hard, the phrase I use is, my sin is ever before me, because I see my own weaknesses and shortcomings so evident in my children. That's what's really hard. And then as they get to be adults and you see that too, and are you in a space that you can even have a conversation about it? But I will say, and I was sharing with some of these ladies earlier, the joys of being able to journey with your children's spouses, that a Charlotte Mason education makes for a richer journey than I would have, possibly envisioned. I'm sure I didn't think about it. But one of the biggest joys of my heart is to have conversations with my daughter-in-law, Lauren. And I was sharing how we took a fairy tales class together, and to be able to talk about those things and just dream and talk about, so they have a 2.5-year-old, and to think about those kinds of things with her. It's just been so fun, because we're so right here in the moment with our own families that we forget that this is for just a moment in time. It goes fast, doesn't it? Your oldest is almost ready to fly. And so I look back and I say, I wish I would have spent more time reading to my kids, reading poetry, reading fairy tales, reading good books. I don't regret any of that. I regret crying over math lessons. I don't regret any time we spent out in nature. I was getting ready to do something one day, and I had pulled Stephen is our youngest, and he has some definite challenges. And I pulled out his nature journal, some of his old nature journals and stuff. And we had a great laugh about one of the first things he put in his nature journal. And so we had some acreage at that point in time, and one of our cats had gotten a mouse, Fortunately, the mouse was all not dismembered. So Charlotte talks about putting it on a piece of white paper, right? And then you can like cake and sketch it. So I got him all set up, and he shows me his picture, and he has body parts all over the page. So anyway, it just is fun. I mean, that's our little fun story together. And you all have lots of those. And so I don't regret any of that time. I regret cracking the whip to try to get something done. And so are there some things that have to be done? I'm sure that's true. But I think there are probably fewer of those things in some ways that if that lifestyle of learning is there and the resources are such, and again, that's an issue, right? But if the resources are such, then there's going to be learning that goes on. And I think here's what I also wish. If my child was struggling, a teen in particular, like I've given them something, why wouldn't I just have sat down and read it with them? Why did I think they had to go off and do it on their own? Why couldn't I just say, well, come on, I'll get you started. So anyway, all these things that you go, well, that was silly. Why didn't you? But I'm sure I was living life and thought I had more important things to do at the time. But again, it goes so fast. So I don't know if that totally answered, but I think a lot of those things that I was most concerned about were really not important. But the character things that I probably should have worked on. So some of you know Molly. Molly's
the first daughter.
Yes.
How
So
old?
she's now 37. So she came to our conference, right? And Molly, for whatever reason, we must not have been very good at making her, like, you know, there's lying, and the lying could be just like a little exaggeration, or it could be over here where you're purposely telling an untruth to get away with something. Molly would tend to lean to the end, not purposely lying to get away with something, but just kind of stretching the truth a little bit. And so I think we let her get away with it. But now as adults, like her brother in particular and I, or dad, will say, there's a Mollyism again, because that's our little phrase for, yep, we know that you're kind of stretching the truth now. And so, yeah, you're busted, but you know what? Life is good. And so we just know that you probably, when you said the 1,000, it's probably only like 10, but it's okay. So anyway, those are the things I look back on though and say, you know, probably should have nipped some more of those kinds of things in the bud, but it's okay.
Molly tuh kayak punya kebiasaan, punya habit like to melebih-lebihkan, kayak lebay gitu loh ketika mungkin mengalami
So like
sesuatu.
today she would say, it was like 120 degrees out there, okay? When in reality, it probably is about 90 degrees out here with the heat index or whatever, right?
Itu
It's
kan kalau di
warm.
CM kan pernah dibahas ya, itu kayak tukang bohong ya.
I don't know what it
Ada ya
is.
di volume CM ya.
It's cool for everybody right now.
Cuman
It's
kayak
very 80s.
mereka the whole family
It could be
kayak
in the
udah
70s.
ngertiin aja.
It's a cool day with the
Molly
breeze.
lah, kita tahu lah, tapi maksudnya bukan begitu. Udah mengerti ya, you understand each other ya, you know
Yes.
exactly how
Yes.
Molly is.
Yes.
You don't need to correct her.
No, because now it's like one of those things where we all know that she's like not saying, and then sometimes she'll correct herself. And she'll, you know, but I'm saying it's not necessarily a big important thing, but a lot of times it has to do with like a temperature or people involved or.
It's not about principle things gitu
Yeah.
ya.
Tapi dia bilang juga, dia kalau lihat ke belakang, seharusnya dia lebih perhatikan habit itu dari awalnya. She wishes that she had paid attention to that habit of white lies when she was younger more, because now she sees the effect of it and they joke about it and they've like
And
worked
so if
with
Molly
it.
ever listens to this,
Yeah.
she'll know when I say
She knows.
Mollyism, what I mean. So it's like I'm not trying to bring out a negative
Jadi kayak
characteristic in her
menyadari
in
ya
a sense,
kesalahan
but to
dirinya ya.
just,
Jadi kayak aware gitu.
yeah,
Yeah, she's aware of it ya.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe you can share some examples, maybe not only your own children, but maybe other children in your community in the States, how they turn out after graduating, you know. Yeah, when they become adults, we're wondering, because all this time kan kita beriman ya. We have faith, but we need to see.
Wow.
So many questions about that in Indonesia.
Yeah.
And again, people did in the States too, because it was an unknown. You guys you all are like pioneers. And so I think if you can have that mentality, you know to just keep pushing on, even though there's a forest there, you still have to knock down the trees in. Because you're the pioneers. You really are. Whereas I feel like my age group were the pioneers in the United States. And so the decades now have shown that homeschooling is a success. And so if you want to look at it academically, homeschoolers do better on all academic tests. If you want to look at it in terms of college acceptance and in terms of scholarships and things, I mean, they do well. They go to all the top schools. They go to the military academies. And so, but it used to be colleges weren't sure about us. So it's a growing process. And so you hate to say that it's changed as a result of seeing the product, but it has. And so I feel like those kids are interesting adults, you know, and they continue to pursue interesting things. And so I still lead a book club. So there's moms in there. One other lady has graduated her children, and she teaches at a Charlotte Mason school where Alyssa's kids went. She's the nature teacher. And so how fun to have her as a friend. I just am saying, I never knew this until more recently, the last few years, and I've known her for like 20 years. She was an art major in college. So Charlotte Mason has brought back her love for drawing and all things in the art realm, whether it be fiber arts or making things or whatever. So she's a neat lady, always learning, very inspirational to be around. Another mom did a different whole kind of classical program. Well, a couple of them did. And they have come to love Charlotte Mason because of the freedom in it to learn and grow with their kids versus keeping to this arbitrary schedule. And the one mom is the one who said, I'm a more interesting person as an adult being on this journey. I think that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think as you look at your families and look at yourselves, can you say, you know what? I like doing this. I never knew, like some of the books I've read, like listening to the Literary Life podcast, is a challenge to me to do some of those books. I haven't done all of them, but I've read far more classic literature in the last 10 years of my life than probably the previous years together. And that was homeschooling my kids even, which, sorry, says a lot about some things that we should have been doing and we didn't do. Which is why I love my daughter-in-law too, because she just brings some of this stuff to the forefront that's fun. But they're in all kinds of places in life, holding down jobs and doing interesting things and raising families. I don't think any of them live on the street, you know? Yeah. And I also feel like, I mean, for the most part, there's still good relationships with parents and siblings. And so that to me is a win. To have a child go off and when they're done with their education say goodbye is hard. It's really hard. So
Do you have a school? Like a formal school?
there's a formal Charlotte Mason school, and you might ask Alyssa about that if you want to.
In Salatiga or in
No.
States?
This is in the United States.
United
This is where
States,
I
right?
live. Yeah. Yeah.
We go back to America for a few months to see family and friends. There's a Charlotte Mason school. Yeah, that
But
started.
But you know what? There are more and more schools opening worldwide. They're all over the place.
Is it PNEU? The PNEU, the parent. Yeah. Like that was the idea behind it, as bringing families together and practicing Charlotte Mason principles, and yeah, they do a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you guys will do that someday.
Yeah, seriously.
Madam,
Who
Madam
knows?
Ratna will open up.
Yeah, who knows? Mhm. But there are more of those schools springing up in the U.S. And then there are schools, Charlotte Mason schools worldwide, just different places, kind of arbitrary. And every time I look, I don't really see anything in Indonesia. So none of you have started the school yet, posted it online.
Has to be a formal kind of school. I think the government will allow a full Charlotte Mason school in Indonesia.
Yeah.
It will be hard in here because we have some rules from the government.
Well, and even the school that we're talking about, you're still homeschooling.
Yes.
But they're just doing the homeschooling for you. So like Alyssa will still, if Alyssa's children were there, she'd still do their transcript. Mm-hmm.
In the school. Like community school, yeah. Yeah, but you still report to the state that you are homeschooling. Because it's
Now that isn't true everywhere. That's what's true in Ohio. Because in the United States, each state has their own homeschooling rules. So,
Actually, it may be like what we do today in our community. Like Damba share to teach chemistry, and then I share about nature journaling and
Yes.
nature walk, and then my husband is teaching art. Maybe like that.
yes.
Yeah.
And you know what? So, we would call that maybe a co-op
Yeah.
kind of thing, a cooperative.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And I think if you're all on the same page in terms of the philosophy that you're embracing, and here's the other piece. Sometimes expectations of children, I don't know if that's an issue here, but expectations of children, it can be a great, great thing. And sometimes I did a co-op for only a short period of time, and we had been friends for a long time, and we had done all this Charlotte Mason stuff together. And I'm still to this day not quite sure what happened, but there was some kind of disagreement, and our husband stepped in, and unfortunately the whole thing fell apart. And so, I think we had a good thing going, a really fun kind of, and the kids were enjoying being together, and the moms and all of that. So it sounds like you have a lovely, and there's certain things you can do. And how many of us would say, yes, would you teach my child chemistry so I don't have to do that? Because let's face it, to take that load off of you, all that preparation, and then to reciprocate, and you're the artist or whatever it might be, and say, hey, we'll do some art lessons with your child. That's just wonderful. And it takes just people being in community to figure some of that out. And there are little pockets here and there. And then how big do you want to get? Like this school has grown exponentially, and that had its own issues growing so quickly.
So jadi sekolah kita
It's the time, the distance. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Just say again what you said.
Yeah, so in Jakarta, the commuting and the public transportation and the distance and the traffic jam, especially,
Yeah.
that
And
would
you can't
be
predict
an
that.
issue. You cannot predict that.
No.
Yes.
Which is why meaning to do a nature study and have lunch and the kids play
Yeah.
is great. And there were 3 other moms, and for a couple years, every Friday, we would either go on a nature hike and have lunch together, and then the kids would play. Molly was the only girl, and the boys were all younger than her, and they would make a gun out of anything. Just saying, it didn't matter. They'd make a gun. And if it got cold, a lot of times we would go to the Art Institute because they had a space down in the basement where it was like an experience center. And so, but we were together every week. It was just so nice to be able to do, or we'd go to one of our houses and we'd do something or other, and then the kids would play and the moms would talk. That was just so valuable, right? As you listen to me talk, you just want to talk too. I know, and you have things to say.
Like that.
Oh, that's true. The whole. So, do you guys talk about mother culture? Have you come up with that topic? So, what have you talked about with mother culture?
Gossiping.
We have weekly discussion about the volumes.
Yeah.
Also, what else? Book club ada ya? Ada book club, ada community Jatim ya. In another community, we have a book club.
Yes.
Discussion.
Shouting.
Yeah.
Scouting.
Yeah. Because the volumes are available in Indonesian, right? All of them? All of them?
Translating the volume 4.
Okay, you're up to, so the first 3 are available.
Writing, not many people can understand in the Victorian version. So and the translation job is still on progress so long.
Well, so all of those are like translated in modern on Ambleside,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
We try
You're
to
using
translate
that-
in Indonesia,
Yeah.
so we'll catch more people to know about the Charlotte
Yeah.
Mason philosophy.
And you know, it really is. There's still much of Charlotte Mason's volumes I read, and I'm like, I'll have to read that again, right? But reading older books and just starting to get that language in your head, and bless your hearts, I mean, you're still with a whole nother language and culture. And granted, I'm not Victorian either, but and a lot of that stuff you go, okay, probably doesn't pertain to us anymore exactly. I can't see any of you wearing your wool clothing outside. But the depth of the, I mean, I look at her and I just think, wow, Lord, how did she have so much wisdom with all of this? One person, and I'm sure part of it was being an only child, and maybe she just, maybe having so much time to herself. And I know as an adult that she struggled with some illness and would have to go away, right? She had friends that would take care of her, so to speak. That I think she just had a lot of masterly inactivity herself, where she could process all of that and write and then share it with the rest of us. So, and there's a podcast that I've listened to that they do read the volumes. And then Cindy Rollins, if you join her Patreon or whatever, she reads and talks about the volumes. But it's finding time to do that stuff too. Yeah, children need to be bored sometimes. That's where creativity comes from. And it makes me think how many of us think that we have to do it all versus training our children to help because we're a family. There's a process, right? And it would be much easier to just do it ourselves. Get it done, cross it off the list and move on.
Yeah.
But that training over time frees you up for so many other things. So we actually lived out on 10 acres for a while. And that's where I feel like our kids would probably call their home. And we had goats and chickens. And anyway, we wanted our kids to learn to do chores, to kind of learn to work some.
Yeah.
And so the only negative is we opened our home up lots to have people come out and enjoy it with us. And so Andy, our second child, would say, I feel like and Tim, my husband, would be like, I feel like I just got our property ready for a lot of other people to enjoy it. But we look back on those times and we go, we did enjoy it. We all enjoyed it. But it was work. So, but I love that. Yes, be bored. So many moms, in particular, think they need to prevent their child from ever being like upset or sad or unhappy. And like they have to schedule all their time to keep them engaged. Yeah. So, I mean, if you're bored, okay, I can help you figure out something to do. You know, and it would be something I'd like you to do, not necessarily something you want to do, but it needs done. So, but I think that's so good. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. But that's part of us, mother culture, learning those things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you do the book club. I mean, that's the thing that I've really enjoyed doing for years and years. And as I say, the one other lady in there that we've been together from the beginning have graduated our kids. And then there have been moms who've moved in and out. And it's a Charlotte Mason kind of based book club. Sometimes we read a volume and sometimes we don't. We're supposed to be reading Waverly right now because Charlotte Mason loved that whole series, I guess. But so far, I've not gotten into it very much. So that's me. Go ahead.
Thanks.